How's it? Hang loose. Well, back to the newspaper, and we're going to figure out how to find out what's going on with August 1st. I was reading some of the comments, and please do. I leave the comments open so I can leave the good and bad up there, but if it's these weird ads or nothing to do with the freaking video, I'm just taking them off. Then I found one said the title is in English, but the video isn't. Dude, I'm thinking about responding on that one. I try to give a little bit of the local flavor of pidgin English, like how's it brah and hey, all that. And when I was in school, many of the other children, a lot of kids, many of the other children, I have to do like parentheses or something, subtitles for pidgin. Too much. But many kids, if they go walk around, hang out with their friends, go to the beach, go to the store, anything like that, they will use the local vernacular. It's a little more than an accent. It's not quite, I don't think, a dialect. If you are linguists, listen up, because I might be making some linguistical commental errors. However, it is something. It's significant enough to have its own label, and people coming over here might not understand some of the things that local people say. And I know over the years, many people have come from California. Have you ever heard people talking the valley? Valley girl, she's a valley. Okay, fine, for sure, for sure. That's not even close to pidgin English as far as away from the standard norm of English. But local kids would say, hey, with the way stay popping, stay shredding, and vernacular inserts. And, hey, the cops stay, hey, watch out, this kind of thing. Now when they would go inside the classroom, teacher would say, only English inside the classroom. And everyone would be like, yeah, everyone can speak English, but it's part of their identity to be speaking pidgin. So, and then I would hear people from the mainland come over here, this is years back, and it's so funny because they want to be cool and they want to go out surfing and be accepted surfing, which is sometimes hard to do. And when they would use pidgin English, they would have a few phrases that they would use. Eh, brah. And almost that's about it. Eh, brah. What, brah? And the local people who speak pidgin all the time, I'm just going, hoo, 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 hoo. Whoa, it's kind of a joke. And even my pidgin, with the one I don't usually go around doing that. I try to include it now. Because in classroom, only speak proper English. Now I'm going to do a little English thing, I think, maybe on that, because English is a strange creature. All foreign languages who want to learn English find it very, very difficult to speak English. They do. And the reason for that is English is a language that evolves, and regionally it has different ways of speaking about it. I might as well make this my English thing. This is all off the cuff. I do not script. And it's a lot different if you're reading off of a teleprompter. And sometimes you can tell. But English is a language which has fairly extreme regional discrepancies. I was in Australia. This is back when I did drink beer, and I wanted to find some of the local beers, not just Foster's. Australian for beer, Foster's. No, and that's accent and English. That's just accent. But when I went down to the local store to find something other than that, I asked the counter guy, where could I get some different local beers? And he just goes, well, and I didn't understand one fucking word. And I looked at him in disbelief, and I went, what? And he goes, says it all over again. And I still couldn't understand. I said, what? And probably would have thought that maybe this guy is challenging me for a fight. What? But finally I got just enough to figure out what it was so far off. But he was basically speaking English with such a thick Australian accent, I didn't understand a word he said. And pronunciation, when we're older and more mature, and full stop. That's another word. I always knew that word is mature. The adults spoke it to me, mature. In classrooms, in schools, mature. Only later on, all of a sudden, someone hoity-toity says mature. Sounds like manure. So that's my experience and background. And the word situation. I don't know how to break it to you people, but for me it's situation, as an S-I-T-U-A, situation. I shall do that again in order for a public service announcement to be helpful. Situation. Now, how many people say Sid, as it wants Sid Barrett? Situation. Drives me bonkers. But technically, that's not incorrect. Situation is definitely more proper and correct. But situation, I'm saying they're fucked in the head. Situation. Try this. Sally sold seashells on the seashore. Sally sold seashells on the seashore. Peter Piper picked a patch of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a patch of pickled peppers. Well, enunciation. Now, in English language, people slur. They slur the things. It's conversational English. A lot of it's slurred. And that's where you get a situation coming from. So, the situation of the situation, it comes from the lazy tongue of enunciation in conversational English. And you'll find that very locally dispersed. Just like soda pop and soda, I don't know, whatever it was. Soda pop and soda, whatever it was. There's regional differences, plain and simple. Now, if you go back to Shakespearean times, by the way, please stay tuned for King Lear on Zoom. I'm hoping that will go better than Big Ben. Holy crap. Anyways, William Shakespeare's time, about the 16th century, that would be the 1500s, late 1500s to the early 1600s or 17th century, which is when William Shakespeare died, pretty much on his birthday. Yippee! During that time, it was the high or late, more like the high to late Renaissance phase of history. In Italy, you will have Michelangelo with the statues, Leonardo with the painting, visual arts. In England, you have literature. Try to say that. Literature. See, that's where my situation instead of a situation. But the literature is the high commodity, or the high advancements in literature. But it was really kind of like in the plays, right? The tragedies and all that. Well, Will Shakespeare's stuff is a little bit more than that in a way. Because English, back to the point, English as a language was very different just before William Shakespeare and the Chaucer region of history. But if you read Chaucer's poems, I confess, read Chaucer's poems. I did look at snippets and parts for the very reason of finding out the transitional phase of the English language. Peter Piper picked a patch of pickled peppers. Sally sold seashells on the seashore. Sounds like someone done it. Simply because of emphasis on words, emphasis on tone. And those things are, a lot of times, only would be known if you were there as a contemporary, which means at that very point in time, maybe not that point in time, if you were alive when they were alive and heard that going around. Yes, that's correct. Now, the English language during Chaucer, now he himself, with the poems, had reformed from one form to another form. It reformed the English language. Now there were vowels. Vowel sounds, well, there were vowel sounds, yes, but there were vowel sounds that could be contained within words and letters of a consistent nature. So the textual scripture of Chaucer's English now conformed English language to where it could be conveyed to the next and following generations, to having a standard way of saying that word. There's a word written down and it's pronounced that way. And if you look at Chaucer's English, which is the English language we're talking about, which is actually a derivative of Anglo-Saxon, French, Latin, etc. Because if you go back with the English language, a funny thing in history, with the Norman conquest of 1899, and the Hasties Puddings, and that battle of Hasty Pudding, or whatever. Well, that Norman conquest, those Normans came from France's Normandy coast. And France's Normandy coast was from Norman. The name was from Norsemen, or the North people. So basically, Vikings came down to France's coast a longer time earlier, invaded and conquered. And that area was the Norsemen, or Northmen. The name Normandy. So Normandy, that area, was from Vikings. The Normans, from when they go over the English Channel and attack the Anglo-Saxons, which were the Germans and the Anglicans already on the island of England, when the Norse invasion came over and they had their Norman conquest in 1099, basically the French came over in this primitive form of English. So actually, after the Norman conquest in 1099, the English kings, known as the Plantagenets, to try to be proper, Plantagenets, were actually French-speaking. So, the first English kings, the whole lineage of the Plantagenets, were speaking French in England. And it is pointed out in one of Shakespeare's plays, I forget exactly which Shakespeare play it was, I'm not that good. However, it's pointed out when a French queen is to marry a English king, and And the French queen is trying to learn English. She speaks French, and she's trying to learn English from her lady that attends her. She says, "Oh, pardon-moi, what do you call this?" And she's saying, "What do you call this?" And, "Oh, mademoiselle, that is called," in French, "that is called the elbow." And she mispronounces it, ilbo, ilbo, elbow, ilbo. "What do you call this?" "That is, qu'est-ce que c'est this?" "That is the chin." And she mispronounces it sin, because they don't have that pronunciation sound. So chin becomes sin. Ilbo, sin, sin, sin. So you see, Shakespeare's making a commentary about speaking French in a way that only the common folk going to the performance would basically catch on. It's like a sin to speak French, because they're promoting the English language, they're revising the English language, they're expanding the English language from Chaucer's time, which is, if you ever go back to Chaucer, you would not understand what they were saying. If you listen to Chaucer's English, how historians and linguistics think it was properly pronounced and iterated, it would blow your mind, because you wouldn't understand what they were saying. Old English, which comes from Shakespearean times, 16th century, which is the 1500s. The these and the thous. It's more than these and thous and ye's and yo's. It's more than that. If you look at Shakespearean English and how the historians and linguisticists, some of these are tongue twisters, some of the linguisticists of that period of time would tell you that it is a difficult thing to really find how it would actually sound, and they come up with a basic, best that they know version of how that English was actually spoken aloud, what it would sound like in actuality. And believe you me, and me not believe you, or whatever, because I know I've read some of these books, it doesn't sound the same. Some of these words are not pronounced very well. And at that time, when it was in written form, it was written more phonetically. So they didn't have a standardized form of the word textually, where somebody could read that word and say, hey, but Shakespeare went out and paved some major roadways for the English language. He basically came up with, what was it, 370,000 new words, and he became a standard for modern English. And then if you try to read Shakespeare, I dare you, go down there and read some Shakespeare. It takes a little bit to try to get that. I think I know what they're saying. But try. Yeah? Because that is Old English, not Middle English. I guess Middle English. I'm not the linguistic expert to cut those barriers. So my commentator, speak English next time, eh? Personally, I think that people who are too staunch about speaking English, I love the language. I think it's great, because it's a nightmare to learn for foreign, other than English speakers. Yeah, try and keep up with all the local lingo. Just throw in one colloquialism, one slang word, and you got a hot mess going on. They're looking in the translation books. Try Google Translator. Yeah, good luck. So, I believe regionally, I adore, not worship, but adore local accents. English, Scottish, Australian. Those are some of my favorites. I just think it's great. if I try to imitate them, I'm not mocking them. I'm actually trying to emulate them because I can use it in a repertoire for our little voice acting and theater classes and our theater escapades. And if you look into Shakespeare's England, in his English, he will actually try to contextualize or write down the exact local variation, the lingo, the broken English, as it's commonly referred to. He'll take the broken English and put it exactly on page, so if you read it directly, it'll come out the broken English that he heard. He's documenting. Another person that does that is Mark Twain, America's greatest author, next to Stephen King. No, there's Ralph Waldo Emerson and Thoreau, blah, blah, blah. Literature. Who needs it? But read a book. Speak English. Right. I've been told that before. The title's in English, but the video isn't. Sure, buddy. What language do you speak, right? Yeah, I took a little salt to that one. Took it with a grain of salt and I went to spit. But personally, what I think is this. Whatever you speak naturally, as long as you're understood, if you're comprehended, if your target listener is understanding you, you're communicating, and that is a good thing. And that's what language is all about. Communication. Lack of communication leads to devastating things. Look at world history. Communication leads to, well, living together with people and, getting along. That's what communication. Communication is the key. So as long as you're understood by your listener, you're fine. You're doing exactly what you need to do. And if you feel embarrassed about your accent, please don't lose your accent. Hey, learn English, properly spoken English, in however you deem proper English is supposed to, in your mind, sound like. Go for it. Right that way. Go right ahead. I'm sorry. That's not proper English. You're going to turn into that? Oh, hell. Also, if you come to Hawaii and you talk to some locals who are talking pidgin and you walked up to them face to face, huh? Which, see how brave you really are, huh? Go up to them and say, hey, speak English. A lot of these dudes are half Maori, half Tongan, and oh my God. You will not get the reception that you think is due your ego and pomp. So, speak English, eh? Personally, I think for those who feel embarrassed about their local dialect or slang or whatever, don't. Preserve it. Embrace it, preserve it, nurture it, carry it forward. If you want to speak proper English at any particular point in time and enunciate everything you need to enunciate and be very clear in whatever situation you happen to be in, or if you want to refer to the origin, because the etymology of a lot of English words are from different other languages. For example, calendars. Did you ever hear someone say schedule? That is the French pronunciation of schedule. Stick with schedule. When someone says schedule, I want to fucking slap them, because I took French in high school and college, and I still je ne sais pas. There's a difference between written French and conversational French. And if you're going to all of a sudden go foo-foo on us and put schedule in there, up yours. Well, whatever, though. However you want to come across when you communicate with the spoken word. Hats off to you. And cheers. So, yes, I do believe speak English. Matter of fact, they should make English the American official language. Forget wasting paper and all those documents. Just make English or not. And if you speak improper English at any particular point in time, the thought police will be there to issue you a citation. Have a happy day. How is it going? Have a happy time. No. How's it? Hang loose. Preserve your culture. Toodles.